never thought a glass of wine could ruin me, but then again, I never thought Daniel Hartley would smile at me that way. The first time I saw him, he didn't just occupy a room, devoured it, leaving everyone else as mere shadows of themselves. And somehow, that night, in that penthouse with walls taller than my apartment ceiling, I felt like I was the shadow. My name is Ethan Miller, a 25-year-old graphic designer trying to convince myself I'm more confident than I actually am. I had been invited to a charity gala by one of my clients, and when I found out Daniel Hartley would be there, my stomach did that weird flip thing it always did around people who made my heart feel like it was trespassing somewhere forbidden. Daniel wasn't just powerful in business. He was magnetic, dangerous, and, for reasons I couldn't explain, aware of how his presence unraveled people, including me. The gala was glimmering with crystal chandeliers and champagne flutes, every corner echoing laughter that I barely registered. I clutched my drink as if it were a lifeline, scanning the crowd until I found him. Daniel was leaning against a marble column, talking to someone who clearly hung on his every word. He had that effortless charisma, the kind that makes you forget to breathe. And then his eyes flicked over the crowd and landed on me. I felt my chest tighten, as if my ribs had decided to betray me by squeezing my heart. I tried to look away, remind myself I didn't belong here in this orbit, but Daniel approached anyway. That confident, deliberate walk that seemed to slow time itself. When he spoke, it wasn't just words. It was gravity. "You're Ethan, right?" he asked, voice low and smooth, almost teasing. "The one who designed the new branding for Avery & Co.?" I nodded, trying to sound casual, though my hands betrayed me by gripping the wine glass too tightly. "Yes, sir. That's me." He smiled then, that smile that could disarm armies. "I've been meaning to meet you. You have a reputation for precision." His eyes lingered, and I suddenly wondered if he noticed how I struggled not to glance down at my own hands, how I imagined what it would feel like if his fingers brushed mine. The rest of the night blurred into fragments of conversation and nervous laughter. Every now and then, our glances would meet across the room, carrying unspoken electricity that made my skin prickle. By the time the gala ended, Daniel had already invited me to a private afterparty in his penthouse. Part of me screamed that this was a terrible idea, the sensible part, but the other part, the part that had been quietly imagining him for months, was screaming yes. The elevator ride up was unbearable. I tried to think about anything else. The city skyline, the faint hum of traffic, the smell of my cologne. But it was pointless. Daniel's presence was magnetic. It filled the enclosed space like a tide I couldn't resist. When the doors opened to the penthouse, the city sprawled beneath us in a glittering sea of lights. Daniel poured us both a drink, and I could feel his gaze on me, unwavering. "You're quieter than I expected," he said, leaning against the marble counter. His suit jacket was off now, sleeves rolled up, revealing lean, defined arms. He looked human, vulnerable almost, but in a way that made the room feel smaller, more intimate, like it was just the two of us in a universe he controlled. I don't usually go to parties like this," I admitted. My voice sounded foreign, shaky, even to me. "I can tell," he said softly, "but I'm glad you came." There it was again, that smile, warmer this time. Not the charming, distant one that could hypnotize crowds, but the one that reached his eyes and made me forget to think about the consequences. We talked. Really talked. Not the polite chatter of strangers trying to impress each other. About art, travel, books neither of us had time to finish. I laughed more than I had in weeks, and I could tell he noticed, even appreciated it. I started to realize that Daniel wasn't just powerful in business. He was brilliant at understanding people, reading the gaps between words and the hesitations in someone's smile. Then came the moment I'll never forget. I reached for my glass, only to find his hand resting over mine. Just for a heartbeat, just enough to make the warmth of his skin seep into my veins. The world shifted. I was hyper-aware of every detail. The scent of his cologne, the subtle tremor in his fingers, the way his eyes lingered on mine like he was memorizing me. "You're nervous," he observed, almost teasing. I wanted to deny it, wanted to appear composed, but the truth escaped me like a confession. Maybe a little. He smiled, that dangerous, knowing smile. Good. That makes two of us. And then, the moment of recklessness. A laugh at some shared joke, our faces closing, a step, then another, until the space between us disappeared. His hand brushed my cheek, and I felt a pulse of electricity. I should have stopped him. I should have reminded myself who he was, what he represented. But I didn't. I let the magnetic pull take me, and when our lips met, it wasn't just a kiss, it was a collision, a confession, a storm I hadn't prepared for. The city lights glimmered through the windows, a silent witness to the intensity unfolding inside. My heart was screaming, my mind was rebelling, and yet, when I looked at him, I saw something I hadn't expected: vulnerability. That fleeting softness that made me realize the powerful man I had always admired wasn't invincible, he was human. And for reasons I couldn't articulate, I wanted to protect him. Hours passed, or maybe it was minutes. Time lost all meaning. We talked and kissed, laughed and lingered in silence, finding a rhythm in each other's presence. Every touch, every glance, felt like a secret language only we understood. For the first time in my life, I didn't want to hide. I didn't want to run. I wanted this, whatever this was, to exist fully without apology. By the time the first light of dawn crept through the curtains, I realized something profound. Daniel wasn't just a fantasy, a distant figure on a pedestal. He was real, and he was here, and I had allowed myself to see him, not just his power, but his heart. And something inside me had shifted irrevocably. When we finally parted, not entirely but enough to breathe, he whispered, "This doesn't have to be the end." And I believed him, because for the first time, I felt that the night hadn't just changed my circumstance, it had changed me. The days after that night felt surreal. I went back to my apartment, my routine unchanged on the surface, but underneath, everything had shifted. Coffee tasted too bitter, my music sounded flat, and every time my phone buzzed, my heart leaped in ways I couldn't rationalize. I found myself replaying Daniel's smile, his hands, the weight of his gaze on me, and sometimes, against my better judgment, I wondered if he was thinking of me too. I tried to return to work with the same focus, but the office felt dull, the screen of my computer glaring back at me like an insult. I caught myself doodling his name in the margins of my sketchbook and had to bite my lip to keep from laughing or crying, sometimes both. Then came the text. "Ethan, coffee? I need to see you." It was simple, and yet it made my pulse sprint. I didn't hesitate. 15 minutes later, I was on my way to a cafe he picked, quiet, elegant, with a corner table that felt private even in the afternoon bustle. He was already there, leaning back in the chair, fingers wrapped around a ceramic mug, eyes lifting when I entered. That smile again, the one that had unraveled me completely, but this time softer, intimate, unguarded. "Hey," he said. "I'm glad you came." "Of course," I murmured, sliding into the seat across from him. "You sounded urgent." He laughed, a low, rich sound that made me forget what I was going to say. "I guess I just wanted to see you again. Talk. Not over text, not over some brief encounter at a party. Just us." Something in the way he said its simplicity, the sincerity, made my chest ache. I nodded, words failing me, because it was exactly what I wanted too. We talked for hours. About small things at first, the mundane, but gradually the conversation deepened, peeling back layers of pretense. Daniel shared glimpses of his life that no one ever saw: the pressure of running a company, the loneliness of power, the fear of being misunderstood. And I told him about my family, my dreams, my insecurities, the ways I had always measured myself against invisible standards. I noticed the way he leaned in slightly when I spoke, how his eyes softened when I laughed, how a subtle shift in his posture made it clear he was entirely present. The magnetic pull from that first night had not diminished. It had only become more intimate, more profound. By the end of the coffee, we walked together through the streets, hands brushing, almost touching, neither of us willing to break the tension. Finally, at a quiet corner, he stopped. "Ethan," he said, voice low, "I can't stop thinking about that night. About you. About us. And I don't want to pretend it didn't happen. or that it can be neatly contained in a single evening. I swallowed, suddenly aware of how my own hands were trembling. Neither do I admitted, almost whispering. His gaze held mine, steady, unflinching, and then he did something daring, took my hand. Just one hand, casual yet deliberate. I felt the warmth, the certainty, the unspoken promise, and it made my heart expand and constrict all at once. I don't know what this is going to be, he said, but I know I want to explore it with you. If you're willing. The word willing echoed in my mind. It wasn't just about desire. It was about choice, respect, and mutual trust. I nodded, unable to speak, because sometimes gestures spoke louder than words. And so began the tentative dance of our relationship. Days filled with stolen glances at work, private dinners, and long walks in the city where the world seemed to shrink around us. We were careful, both aware of the social and professional minefields surrounding us, but somehow, our connection felt urgent and inevitable, like gravity pulling two planets toward collision. Yet, even as we fell into a rhythm, doubt lingered like a shadow. Daniel's world was a realm of power and scrutiny, and I feared my own insignificance might one day make me a pawn or worse, a casualty in his life. Sometimes, late at night, I lay awake wondering if I was just a fleeting distraction, a chapter he could close with the ease of a boardroom decision. Then came the first real test. A high-profile investor meeting demanded Daniel's attention, and I, invited as a guest in a casual sense, found myself sidelined amidst assistants, journalists, and polished executives. I watched him command the room, every word sharp, every gesture calculated. People hung on his every syllable. And in that moment, I felt a pang I hadn't expected. Jealousy, but not of other men of the world itself, which demanded so much from him, leaving so little for me. After the meeting, he found me sitting alone in the corner of the hotel lounge, nursing a cocktail I hadn't touched. "You're quiet today," he said, sliding into the seat beside me. "I'm fine," I said, forcing a smile, though the truth trembled beneath it. He studied me, eyes narrowing, and then reached out to cover my hand with his. "Ethan, you can tell me anything. You don't have to pretend." I swallowed, the lump in my throat stubborn. "I'm just scared," I admitted finally. "Scared of not being enough, of being left behind." His grip tightened, firm yet gentle. "You're not going to be left behind," he said. "And you're more than enough, more than I ever expected. But I need you to trust me, even when it's hard." The intensity of his words left me breathless. I leaned into him, seeking comfort, and found it not just in his presence but in the unspoken understanding that whatever power he wielded in the world, here, with me, it mattered less than our connection. As weeks turned into months, our bond deepened. We shared mornings and evenings, secret smiles in crowded rooms, whispered conversations that lasted long into the night. There were moments of doubt, yes, tensions arising from misunderstandings, my insecurities, and his obligations, but each time, we found our way back, often in the simplest yet most profound ways. A hand held, a look that said, "I'm here," a kiss that erased all distance. One rainy evening, I found myself at his apartment again, the city outside a blur of neon lights and raindrops. We had spent the day at an art gallery, walking in silence afterward, and now we sat together on the couch, legs tangled, hands intertwined. "Do you ever think about the future?" I asked, voice tentative. "All the time," he said. "But the future isn't about predictions. It's about what we build together. Right now, this moment, this connection, it's more important than any forecast or strategy." I leaned my head against his shoulder, feeling the steady beat of his heart. "I don't want to imagine life without you," I whispered. "You won't have to," he said, pressing a kiss to my hair. "I'm not going anywhere." That night, we didn't need words. Every touch, every glance, every heartbeat conveyed the depth of what we felt. The storm outside mirrored the intensity inside, and yet, in our cocoon of warmth and trust, it felt safe, inevitable, and profoundly tender. Our relationship, once a whirlwind of attraction and uncertainty, had transformed into something enduring. Daniel, the man I had once admired from a distance, had become my anchor, my confidant, my partner. And I, once tentative and unsure, had learned to claim my place beside him, to trust in the power of vulnerability, and to embrace love without fear. Months later, as we stood together on the balcony of his penthouse, watching the sunrise paint the city in shades of gold, he wrapped an arm around me. "Remember that night?" he asked, voice soft. "The one that changed everything?" I replied, leaning into him. He smiled, pressing his forehead to mine. "Exactly. I never imagined that night would lead us here. And yet, here we are together, stronger and happier than I ever thought possible." I laughed softly, tears glimmering in my eyes. "Me too. I never thought a single night could change my life. But it did." And in that moment, with the city waking below us and the promise of countless mornings ahead, I realized that love, in its most unexpected form, had not only found might had transformed me. The powerful man I had once only admired had become the heart I never knew I needed. And I, in turn, had become someone he trusted, someone he chose, someone he loved. It wasn't perfect, and it wasn't simple, but it was ours, and that was enough. The weeks that followed felt like stepping into a new world, a world where the past fears, doubts, and insecurities gradually faded under the warmth of trust and love. Daniel and I had settled into a rhythm that was both exhilarating and grounding. Mornings began with quiet coffee on his balcony, the city still wrapped in pre-dawn hush, and nights ended tangled in each other's arms, whispering truths we had never voiced to anyone else. Yet, love, even when nurtured, never existed without challenges. One evening, as autumn winds rattled the penthouse windows, Daniel received a call that pulled him into the very world that had always made him untouchable. A major business deal was falling apart, a public scandal threatening to erupt, and I could see the tension shadowing his normally composed features. "Ethan," he said, voice tight but gentle, "I need to handle this. I don't want to worry you, but it might take the whole night." I nodded, though my chest tightened. I understood the demands of his world, the responsibility he carried. "Go. I'll be here," I said, forcing steadiness into my voice. He paused, taking my hand in his, lingering in that simple yet profound gesture. "Promise me you'll wait," he said softly. "Wait for us." "I promise," I replied, my heart quietly pledging the same. Hours stretched into the night. I tried to busy myself, but the apartment felt hollow without his presence. Every notification made my stomach leap. Every sound outside made me tense. And yet, despite the anxiety, there was a strange reassurance. Our bond had grown strong enough to endure distance, even in moments of uncertainty. When Daniel finally returned, the city bathed in the first light of morning, he looked tired but victorious. The tension in his shoulders had eased, and when he saw me waiting, relief softened the sharp edges of his gaze. Without a word, I ran into his arms, burying my face in his chest. "You kept your promise," he murmured, arms tightening around me. "I did," I said, the words muffled against his suit. "And I'll always wait. For you. For us." That night, as we lay together, the weight of his hand on my back, his forehead against mine, I realized something essential. Love wasn't about perfection. It was about showing up, choosing each other over and over, even when life demanded otherwise. And Daniel, the man who once seemed untouchable, had chosen to be vulnerable with me, to share not only his triumphs but his fears, his exhaustion, and his heart. A few weeks later, he surprised me with an evening I will never forget. The penthouse was dimly lit with soft golden lights, candles flickering, casting dancing shadows on the walls. A single bouquet of my favorite flowers rested on the table. Daniel, looking effortlessly elegant yet approachable, took my hand the moment I entered. "I wanted tonight to be special," he said, eyes serious yet tender. "To celebrate us." I smiled, feeling warmth rise through me. "Us?" I asked softly, my heart already pounding. Yes, us, he confirmed. Everything we've gone through, the doubts, the fears, the nights apart, the moments that tested use it all led to this. And I want to make it clear that I want you completely, not just in fleeting moments, but in every day we have together. He stepped closer, and in that intimate distance, I felt the weight of his words sink into me. Daniel was offering more than romance. He was offering a commitment, a declaration, a future I had once dared only to imagine. Without thinking, I threw my arms around him, and he held me tight. We kissed, slow and deliberate, tasting months of longing, trust, and affection. Every heartbeat, every touch, every sigh felt like a promise. Then came the moment that forever shifted our relationship from passion to devotion. Daniel reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. My hands trembled, heart hammering as he opened it to reveal a simple, elegant ring. "Ethan," he said, voice trembling just slightly, a rare crack in his otherwise composed demeanor. "I don't need grand gestures or perfection. I just need you. Will you be mine? Will you share your life with me?" Tears pricked my eyes, not from shock, but from the overwhelming clarity of love finally realized. "Yes," I whispered, my voice breaking with emotion. "Yes, Daniel, I will." He slipped the ring onto my finger, a perfect fit, and for a moment, the world seemed to hold its breath. Outside, the city pulsed with its usual rhythm, oblivious to the transformation taking place within that penthouse. But inside, time had stopped, leaving only us. From that day forward, our love was no longer a delicate secret or a cautious exploration. It was a shared life, rich with laughter, understanding, and intimacy. We traveled, discovered new passions together, and even faced challenges inevitable in any relationship, but each hurdle only strengthened our bond. One evening, months later, we found ourselves back on the balcony, rain softly drizzling, the city lights reflecting like liquid gold below us. Daniel pulled me close, our fingers intertwined. "Do you remember that first night?" he asked, voice soft, nostalgic. "How could I forget?" I said, resting my head against his chest. "It was terrifying and thrilling all at once." He chuckled, low and warm. "It changed everything." "It did," I agreed, "but I wouldn't trade it for anything." He kissed the top of my head, and I felt a profound sense of peace. The powerful, enigmatic man I had admired from afar had become my partner, my confidant, my love. And I, once tentative and insecure, had grown into someone who could stand beside him, proud, vulnerable, and whole. Life continued, sometimes chaotic, sometimes calm, but always together. We had built something rare and extraordinary. A love that respected individuality yet embraced unity. A bond forged through vulnerability and nurtured with trust. And every time I looked at Daniel, I saw not just the man I had once idolized, but the heart that had chosen me, day after day, moment by moment. Our story, born from a single unexpected night, had evolved into a journey of depth, passion, and enduring companionship. And as we stood on that balcony, watching the rain shimmer against the city lights, I realized that real, transformative love wasn't about being swept away by power or charm. It was about meeting someone, fully and unapologetically, and choosing them over and over, through every storm, every challenge, and every quiet, ordinary day. I smiled, pressing my lips to his shoulder. "Thank you," I whispered. "For what?" he asked, though I knew he understood. "For choosing me," I said. "And I always will," he replied, voice full of certainty, warmth, and promise. And in that perfect, ordinary moment, I knew it was true. One unexpected night with the powerful man I had always admired hadn't just changed my heart, it had given me a love that transformed my entire life. A love that was patient, passionate, and enduring. A love that was ours. We stayed there, wrapped in each other's arms, letting the city hum beneath us, letting the rain fall, letting the quiet intimacy speak louder than any words. And I understood, fully and irrevocably, that this was the kind of love worth everything, worth waiting for, worth fighting for, and worth cherishing every single day. Because sometimes, all it takes is one unexpected night to change everything. And for us, it had. Thank you for listening. If you find it interesting, please like and subscribe to follow the next stories.